Hello everyone, my name is Alex and I am a member of the very lovely and impressively populated Titanic Adventure Out of Time community, and I would like to welcome you all of you my friends, to the very first walkthrough I have ever done of this very wonderful game that we all love and talk about on the community. And the thing is that there are many walkthroughs on YouTube, and I was thinking, how am I going to make this different? And one thing that I hopefully will be able to add to this walkthrough to make it different from all the others, and there are some very wonderful walkthroughs out there and I've seen most of them, is to be able to talk about the history of some of the things in the game. And I studied history at university, and I'm really fascinated by this particular period. And I live in the United Kingdom, so this is the home of the Titanic. I am really ashamed to say that I have never been to any of the principal sort of sites like Southampton or... It's really interesting because I lived in Ireland, and there was just before I left, I lived there for a year. Just before I left, I went with my dad to a Titanic exhibition at the town hall in Belfast, and there a man, I don't remember his name, but he appears, he's a really old man, and very old, and he spoke about how he used to go and see his dad, watch his dad sort of being one of the builders on the Titanic. And I got a picture with him. I don't think he's alive anymore. If he is, then obviously congratulations to him. And the thing is that he has appeared in a couple of documentaries. One about Titanic conspiracies. Anyway, which one should I go for? Let's go for the game.
Once again,
Here we are.
Top stories. London has endured another night of German bombing. Most damage was concentrated in the East End. The RAF
Let's see if I remember how to. Of course, I remember. What kind of a thing is that to say?
In Russia,
what kind of a fan am I?
Are reported around Leningrad. In
this
Asia,
is the model. I love
American
this model.
Fortress at
Look at it.
is still defiant.
Look at this
but
model.
Japanese forces are reported nearing.
And obviously, this game wasn't as, because I know they made the game previous to this, Cyberflix, Dust, and it wasn't anywhere near as popular as Titanic, and I'm not surprised it was, and it still is. And I hope we get more and more people joining our community. I pride myself with the fact that I contacted Joe, who plays Charles Lambeth in the game, and I just want, if he's watching this, I just want to thank him for answering my messages and all that, and for joining our community, and also for the fact that a few months ago he helped Ben with that thing he did, and there was another guy, Nathan something, and you three did a little. You put together like Charles, and from the sort of the images that what's his name, Siegfried extracted, and you created almost a new, not even almost, a new scene with Charles, and it was Joe that did the dialogue. You know, that was very authentic, and thank you for that, Joe. and Ben, who wrote the script, and that was really, really wonderful. And Nathan, who put it all together. And that was really, really nice. And hopefully we're going to see more of that. And I thought it was so beautiful. I mean, it was so professional. And I am of the opinion that this game needs to be remade. And I am really, 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 really into virtual reality. I don't know how many of you out there have Oculus Quest. If you haven't, buy it. I mean, it is the beginning of it. It is the beginning. It's going to get slimmer and slimmer and slimmer, and it's going to, you know, right now it's niched. I mean, how many billions do we have in the world of people? I think the total number of people that have got VR, I was reading a statistic a few weeks ago, is around, I mean, in the whole world, it's about 300 million, and hopefully bit by bit it's going to increase. And this game is really, really good for virtual reality. And hopefully someone out there will, you know, start a Kickstarter campaign or to, you know, gather funds so that we can put this in virtual reality, because they're so beautiful. Imagine seeing all those characters. And if you haven't got virtual reality, go get it. I mean, Oculus Quest, right? Forget about all... No, they're all good. I'm not going to talk down on any of the other ones. But Oculus Quest is really, really good. And since I'm since I'm making, you know, free advertisement for Facebook, and I'm sure they'll be glad that I'm doing it. I'm not charging anything. I also recommend... should I do this or shouldn't I? No, I will. I recommend the games Star Wars, Galaxy's Edge, and Red Matter. Beautiful. And once you're in there, I mean, you just forget about the physical world, about the real world. They are truly, truly beautiful, and I recommend them both. And there are other many games. But what I especially love about virtual reality is the idea that I can put my films on something called big screen, and you can watch it in various screen sizes. Almost like you're in your own living room or a cinema. You also have a cinema, and you can watch it, and that's extraordinary. Imagine 20, 30 years ago you said, you know, I want to have my own cinema. But then you'd have to invest. People would think that, you know, you're a millionaire. You'd have to invest in all the gear, all the technology, and have the room to put. You don't need that anymore. And this is the future. And this game needs to, you know, needs to come into the future. And hopefully somebody will do it. Let's have another turn. Oh, this is just beautiful. You see, this game is just... When something is truly, truly beautiful...
You're 2 weeks late with the rent.
Oh, it's the landlady.
Again, today's top stories. London has endured another night of German bombing.
This is the scrapbook.
Most damage was concentrated in the East End.
Imagine if you played this in virtual reality. You could actually be in that room. You could, I don't know, you could take this into your hands and open it. And I don't know if you, another game that I recommend is they've converted Myst to VR. So if any of you out there, because I know it's from the same time as the Titanic, maybe a couple of years sort of older than the Titanic, but you can play Myst in virtual reality, and it's gorgeous. It makes all the difference. And this is the future of gaming. But enough about virtual reality. So, here we have... Let's have a look at this again. I want to say something really, really, really interesting. I went to the British Library, and I looked at all the old newspapers, and the first thing I wanted to see, what do you think was? The Titanic, newspapers that talked about the Titanic. I wanted to see the Times and you know, all of those newspapers from when the Titanic sank. And can you believe it? The first thing I wanted to see, the first thing I looked at was all the national newspapers on the day the Titanic set sail. I couldn't find a single news item on the front cover. Not a single news item. Maybe I didn't look hard enough, because you know there's newspapers back then.
In Asia,
They had
the
a lot of
American
writing on
fortress
them,
at
which means that
Corregidor is
these
still
people back then,
defiant,
they must have had a
but
lot of
Japanese
time on their
forces are
hands,
reported nearing the
right?
Burmese oil fields. And that
And of
concludes
course
the
they did,
news
because they were
summary.
read by the upper
We now
class, and the
return
upper
you to
class
our
had
music
servants,
program.
and they had time to, you know, they had time to do all of these things, to read the newspapers and to have their breakfast that took like 2 hours. And now we don't do that kind of stuff. We're all in a rush. We all have our breakfast on the go. And I looked at the newspaper and I was gobsmacked. I thought, where's the Titanic? And then I realized, and not even all of the newspapers, all of the newspapers on the day of the Titanic sank. And I don't mean I mean the 15th and the 16th. Then later later dates, they did have the Titanic mentioned, but not even then. When the Titanic, so I thought to myself,
London has
and then I
endured another
realized
night
that
of
for
German
them,
bombing.
the Titanic
Most
was like, I
damage
know
was
it was the biggest ship
concentrated
in the
in the
world,
East
but it was
End.
like any other ship,
The
you know.
RAF has struck
And the fact that
enemy
it sank,
aerodromes in the
for us it's
Havre and
more
the Low Countries.
shocking because of all
In Russia,
the way in which
further
it's been
German
hyped and the
losses are
story and
reported
passengers
around
and all that and
Leningrad.
time that has
In
evolved
Asia,
and
the
all the
American
stories that have been
fortress at
told
Corregidor is
throughout
still
time,
defiant,
and it's
but
become more and more
Japanese forces are
mythological
reported nearing the Burmese
and
oil
legendary and
fields.
all of that.
And
But for
that
them
concludes
lot,
the
it
news
must have
summary.
been just a ship,
We
you
now
know.
return
Yeah,
you
we're
to our
going on the
music program.
Titanic, you know. Just a ship like any other. So I thought it was really, really interesting that now, one thing I do like, I know that what's his name, Scott Lawrence or something like that. He's made, and hello Scott, if you're watching this. He's made a 3D sort of, built this room in 3D in Blender, and I thought that was really, really nice. And hopefully, Scott, you'll do the whole thing, the whole ship. And it looks really, really good, really authentic. And
Today's top stories.
let's have a look.
London has endured
Oh,
enough.
turn this off. No, don't. No, turn it off. And one of the things I like to do is I like to, but this is, I haven't done this. This thing over here, Tellurian. Does anyone know what quarterly? Did this actually exist? Anyway. London, he's watching you. And I gotta remind myself that this is the Second World War. I keep thinking it's for some reason it's the First War. It's not. It's the Second World War. Now look at this. Oh, isn't there a spider there? No, there isn't. And I like the little things like the sound of the cars and... Now, okay, let's move on. That's Churchill. Has he got... Is that a machine gun? Oh, anyway. Now, we all know what's going to happen when we open this door.
Sneaking out, are you? I want me money.
Do you? Yeah. You get more than that in a minute. And here we have all the Mama's enriched spaghetti. I'm actually going to look into this and see if how many of these actually existed. Isn't there? Where is it? Oh. Okay. Now to the important. Oh, okay. Here's the newspaper. And I really, really love this. I mean, this looks so great. Nazi bombers hit city. Heavy damage in Docklands. Japs near Burma oil fields. Right. Oh, okay. Let's have a look at this. Futility. I've actually gone and downloaded from a website, archive.org or something like that, the actual book, Futility. And I'd like to get a sort of a physical version. And so I'm going to make my own. And what I think somebody should do something, start a shop and start creating things like this, sort of, and you could sell them, you know, like this little, like that newspaper, and then you can have your own sort of physical version of this newspaper, and you can do that. And obviously the people that created this game, I mean, you know, they put such a lot of effort into it. And I did watch that documentary about the making of the Titanic, making of Adventure Out of Time, and I thought it was so beautifully put together, and well done to that guy who did it, and I learnt a lot from it. Lord and Lady Lambeth have died in the Titanic disaster. The couple has been missing since the sinking and were not among the survivors rescued by the Carpathia last Monday. Alright, and I really love these buildings, and as I live in Britain, and I'm sure a lot of you do, they are, I can tell you that they look really, really authentic. Typical British buildings, and there's bunting as well. Okay, and here we have, who is this lady over here? Who? Is that supposed to be George? No, it isn't, no. That I can see even less. I can tell even less who. And that's, well, that has got to be George VI. And here we have the magazines. Ah, the postcard. And this is what I'm talking about. Somebody should, I'm sure there's somebody who did. They created, like, and you can print them. You can print pictures of what's his name, Sacha Barbican, and I'm definitely going to take this and make my own cards. Have a physical sort of copy of. Now, is this supposed to... No, it couldn't be Georgia. What am I talking about? They died in the disaster. There's these Max's cigars. Ah, and here we have the tarot card. I don't know how many of you are into tarot. I am. Now, let me see something. See if I can... I got my cards here with me, because I'm quite certain that card the death. No, it is. It is. It's, yeah, number 13. And this is the card that you have to gamble for with Riviera. I've actually been playing Dust recently, and I think it's really Riviera appears in that. I think he's the only character that appears in that and Titanic. Okay, well, we haven't looked at these properly, have we? Carlson 9 Stanley Crescent. No. Okay, here we are. That's really, really sad for Carlson, is that he's, all of these friends of his, they've been travelling and he's been stuck in, you know, poverty. And, well, if he hadn't spent the night with Georgia, if he hadn't, you know, let his, how do you say it, let his heart conquer his head, maybe he'd be travelling now in a world of peace. And hopefully by the end of the game, if I'm not silly and I play it properly, he will be able to enjoy a world of peace. Now, I'm pretty certain this is a dream. He's having a dream. I might be wrong. You know, Hindenburg. Now, this is really interesting. Okay, now we come to the really, really interesting bit. The letter from the Secret Service. And I am, first of all, let's read it. 10th of August 1914. Now this is really, really interesting. Really interesting. His Majesty's government regrets to inform you that your services in the office of the Secret Service are no longer needed. Termination to be effective immediately. With regrets, Commander TSD Hippo. Now, I am really, really, really fascinated by the history of intelligence and of the British Secret Service. And during World War One, you had the enemy back then. You know how during the Cold War you had the Russians, the Soviet Union, that were the enemy of the West, and now you have it's like every single decade you have a different enemy from different parts. But back then, the enemy was Germany, because we're supposed to believe that Wilhelm II was crazy about, and then later we meet Zeitel, and he's pretty much the spokesperson for Wilhelm II, Kaiser Wilhelm of Germany. And let's not forget that him and George were cousins. They were cousins. His mother, I don't remember the name of his mother. She was not even, cousins. She was the granddaughter, or the daughter. No, she was the daughter of, the daughter of Queen Victoria. And Wilhelm was cousin with George V. But anyway, Germany was a threat back then, and it's a really, really, and you had, I think, well, it's really interesting, because I'll give you a little story, right, about how ordinary people felt about Germans back then. And there was this guy, let me just check out his name, William the something. If you haven't read him, he's the mouthpiece for anti-German sentiment in Britain. William the right, his name was, here we are, and he's got a huge bibliography, lots of books, mostly about anti-German sort of feeling, and they're quite enjoyable actually, but they're not always accurate, His name is William Tufnell Le Queux. Anyway, it's spelled L-E and then last name Queeux. William Le Queux. And one of the first books I read about him was about the Russian monk Rasputin. And it was ripe. Britain was ripe with anti-German sentiment, to such an extent that people would write to, accusing Germans of all sorts. People would write to the sort of national newspapers like the Times. And this one man wrote, and he wrote something to the effect, "Dear sir, I live in a remote area of England, and there's this, we got these fields in front of my house, and I can see these people, I know they're German, and they take turns in painting the same painting, sort of like between 12 and 4, one person is painting, and then the next one, someone else comes," and he was really, really, suspicious, said, why are they painting the same painting, and they're always there? And what they were doing, it emerged, is they were actually monitoring the airfield nearby, the sort of the military installations. So I'm not, that was the kind of world that Britain was in. And what really, really fascinates me is that, I don't know how many of you are interested in this, but just bear with me, right? George V was in the Navy, and he, Dartmoor or some place like that, yeah. And he was friends with a man called Mansfield Cumming. And Mansfield Cumming retired, and in 1909, to combat sort of anti-German sort of sentiment and all that, and to, to find all the agents of Germany within the UK, he received a letter from the War Office, this Mansfield Cumming. I think he was born on the 1st of April, and he was in his 50s, so he was, you could call him a late bloomer, started his most famous career. First career was in the Navy. Second career was, anyway, he got this letter in 1909, and he was invited to form the what was known as the Secret Service Bureau. Now, in this game, later when we meet Penny, she's going to call it. She's going to say that it's the Bureau of the Secret Service. It isn't. It was the Secret Service Bureau, and that later became MI6. At the same time, they made another guy called Vernon something. I don't remember his name, complete name. He was put in charge of creating the Internal Security Service of Britain, MI5. And I'm really, really fascinated. I don't think, because this particular part of the game is in the 40s. I think it is in the 40s. And I don't think he was, well, let me have a look. I don't think he was still alive. I think he was dead by then. Mansfield Cumming. And Mansfield Cumming, oh, I definitely go and read about him. He was such an interesting character, and how he began. The first day he went there, he had nothing, because it was off the books. The government says, right, we're going to give you the money, but we don't want to get involved in any of this, right? You're off the books, you do your own thing. You protect Britain, you find all the bad people, you get your agents, and within a short space of time, he built a very healthy, a very powerful secret service. And it's really, really interesting, because he, ever since then, and obviously Ian Fleming, who made James Bond, he got his inspiration for M from Mansfield Cumming. Only the really interesting thing is that Mansfield Cumming signed his name always with C, the letter C, and in green. And ever since then, right up to today, every single head of the British Secret Service, now it's known as MI6, has been signing C in green. And that's, I don't know if it's still in green, but it's definitely C. And he used to tell his agents that they should disguise their writing with semen, but then they discovered that it was really smelly, so they had to sort of come up with different method of disguising their messages. There's a book that I urge you to read. I mean, if you want to understand the context of this story, because this is obviously a spy thriller, and when Penny says his lordship is watching very closely, I'm really, really interested in what she means by that. Because she either means that, because George V, there's a book that I recommend you to read, which describes how the British Secret Service is actually in the service of the establishment of the royal family, and has always had, I mean, you got to remember that George V was very good friends with the man who founded the British Secret Service, and I'm about half convinced that it was George V who proposed him. And the book that describes the very close relationship between the British Secret Service, and even going back to, King Arthur, is called Secret Royals. Definitely read it. Another book is The Life of, what's his name? Mansfield Cumming. And it's called The Quest for C, or The Search for the Head of the British Secret, something like that, Quest for C. But he's definitely got a very interesting life. Definitely read it. Because when Penny says, his lordship is watching this very closely indeed, I wouldn't fumble up this chance either unless you want to spend the rest of your... I don't remember the other bit. I think she actually means, she means two things. Either George V, who was very, very, he was informed about all things and would have been informed about that mission. He worked very, very closely with the also because the enemy was ruled by his cousin, you know, Wilhelm II. And you know what? I also recommend that you read the life of Wilhelm II. He wasn't as bad as he's made out to be. And I don't know how many of you have seen, and I definitely recommend you watching it. It's really entertaining. It's really beautifully made, really beautifully acted. It's The Kingsman. If you haven't seen that, and the guy that plays Tom Holland, I think is his name, and he plays not just Wilhelm in The Kingsman that was recently made about a couple of years ago with Ralph Fiennes, but Tom Holland, he plays not just him, but it's really, really intelligent because he plays Wilhelm, he plays Tsar Nicholas II, and he plays George V. And the thing is, they look the same, so they chose the same actor. It was really, really ingenious. But what I'm really, really fascinated about, really fascinates me, and I might write a book on it one day, is that After Hours, Mansfield Cummings was also a bit of a Q, you know, Q from James Bond, who does all the gadgets, makes all the gadgets, and he made his own gadgets, and he made this grandfather clock, and it's apparently its house is now housed in the current British Secret Service MI6 in that building on Vauxhall Cross, and it's still there. You know, it's right as you walk in the main hall. That is really, really fascinating. And it's really, really fascinating to put everything into context and to understand, well, Penny's, you know, soon we'll see her talking, we'll meet her, wonderful character, and she says, you know, his lordship is watching this very close. And this is, now, another thing that I find really, really interesting, and I'm getting ideas. My mind never stops, and my mouth never stops either. Look at this date. 10th of August, 1914. Now, I am so fascinated by that. Why am I fascinated? Because the mission, my idea, my understanding, is he fails the mission, and he gets fired. Not 2 years later, then. Immediately. A month. After a couple of weeks, nowhere near. Why would they have fired him 2 years later? And here is my theory. My theory is that he was suspended. He might have had some sort of, you know, I'm really interested in what age he is, Carlson. But anyway, he was suspended after the mission, sent on, what do you call it, gardening leave or something like that. Anyway, he was suspended, but they thought to themselves, well, okay, he failed, you know, but he's young, and maybe it was his first mission or his second mission. You know, maybe he was just out of university, because I know a lot of them were hired straight from university, from Cambridge and Oxford. And he was suspended, and I'm about half, from this date, 1914, I'm about half convinced that a little while later, you know, like a little while, I mean about a year later, you know, I can imagine it, just go off, go away, think about what you want to do, think about if you want to be sent on missions and want to be, you know, sleeping with the suspects and all that, or do you want to get down to doing the mission, and if you want to do that, come back again, once you've thought out what you want to do. And about 1914, I got this theory that he was reinstated and he was given another chance to prove himself. And that just before the war, there was another chance for him, like immediately just before, like around June, July. When did the war start? It started in August, didn't it? And that he was given the mission just before the war to go and get those items again, find those items again. You know, you failed then, but now we've had word that the Rubaiyat, and I know the painting would prove useless and all that, but the necklace that would have financed, when was what's his name shot? Franz Ferdinand. It was on the 28th. It was in July, wasn't it? So yeah, he could have had that mission of going off and you know, maybe finding, maybe he was told, he was sort of, go and find the ruby, no, the necklace, because it's going to be used to purchase, it's going to be sold, but we have intel that Vlad or somebody, and there you have it, there you have a scope for another game, for another mission. And my theory is that he went and he was given this chance to sort of prove himself again, to redeem his previous failures, and he failed again. And, well, the result was him being fired. We don't need you. Maybe he met up with another one of his girlfriends. But anyway, it's great to sort of entertain those sort of, because it's really interesting, isn't it? 1914. Why not then? No, it must definitely be my theory. He was given another chance. There was another mission. So people are, you know, at Cyberflakes or whoever, Dream Factory or whatever. If you can hear me, there's another game that you can make. And I'm sure we'd love that, wouldn't we? Okay, now, the watch. Ah, no, I'm not going to go in, because this is never going to end. Obviously, I'm going to be making this in, you know, sort of many episodes, and I can't do the whole thing in one go.
See here.
Okay.
This isn't about your dedication. Pringle certainly attests to your loyalty. No, your dismissal stems from the Titanic mission. That failure can no longer be ignored, especially now. I am sorry, but someone must shoulder the blame. The service, you understand. We can't be held responsible.
Now I'm really fascinated by this watch, right? Because, wait.
See here.
Why did it stop?
About your dedication.
I mean, he
He
escaped the Titanic sinking.
No, your dismissal stems from the Titanic mission.
And there's a lot of questions that I have about many things, but this one in particular, why is it stuck at 220? It's 220, yeah. 220. That's very interesting. Oh, and this voice.
See here.
That's definitely Officer Morrow, isn't it? Oh, I can't wait to see him. And anyway, if we're gonna get to that bit, let's. I'm pretty sure the. Ah, here we are. And then once we get past this and the introduction, I'm gonna stop here, and then I'll see you in the next episode.
The past, forever locked in regret.
Let's get this cursor out of the way.
But what if the past could be changed? Years have come and gone since the night that saw the end of the world, my world. The service needed someone on the Titanic. They chose me. I was to wait for a signal from my contact, so I remained in my cabin. I left only once. Georgia was on board. And that's when it came. There'd be no second chance. It was Sunday, April 14th. Too late, you see, for the Titanic. For me. What if I'd met with my contact, prevented disaster? What if the past could be changed? What then?
Now, I'm only going to say this, and then I'll stop here, first part, and then I will soon be making second part to this, is that I know, and I have played the demo. Oh, let me just do this. Turn it off. The demo of Honor and Glory. I've been playing it ever since the first one came out. And I've played, I don't know how many of you have seen the last demo, and it's really beautiful. But my opinion is that nothing beats this. I know this isn't authentic. That is authentic. Honor and Glory is authentic. And they've spent a lot of time researching the ship, and, you know, they've done a great job. But nothing beats this. This is just so beautiful. So beautiful. I mean, look at it. And again, I come back to this virtual reality thing, that when we that this game should be made for virtual reality. Anyway, I will see you. Thank you for being here, for watching this, and I'll see you in the second part.